All right, guys, what is up? Welcome back in GC Live Tuesday episode instead of Monday. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. Moved it back a day just because no game this past week. Was not a heck of a lot new to talk about, but now we do have at least a Shane Beamer press conference to get into as the Gamecocks get ready for a trip to Texas A&M. But first, going to tell you about a couple of our great sponsors. First of all, our presenting sponsor, our guy Clint Hammond, CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com. 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. As we always tell you, if you're in the market for a new home, or maybe you're not at that place yet, but you just want to be at that place at some point in the future, let Clint take a look at your financial picture, let you know, hey, how much home can I afford? What do I need to be saving towards? How much do I need to be saving? What would a monthly payment look like for me in a certain house? If all of those are questions you may have, give Clint a shout. Again, 803-422-6797. And if you want more information about his background and everything he has going on over at CMG Home Loans, just head on over to ClintHammond.com.
Let's also tell you about Ferry Chevrolet. Hear about them here on the program all the time. You also see them on the Insiders Forum and on GamecockCentral.com. FerryChevrolet.com, F-A-I-R-E-Y. That's FerryChevrolet.com. Or give them a call. 803-937-4531. Business that's been around, family business that's been around since 1926. Started right here in the Palmetto State in St. Matthews, now conveniently located in Orangeburg between Columbia and Charleston. Well worth a trip to a dealership if you are in the market for a new or used vehicle. You can also check them out, of course. Check out their inventory online, ferrychevrolet.com, or give them a call again, 803-937-4531. Still in business to this day, still Joseph Ferry, fourth-generation dealer running the show, and still operating with honesty, integrity, and a handshake. As we all know, that can be hard to find in dealerships. That's how they operate over at Ferry Chevrolet. So if you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, make sure you make them your first call. Give them an opportunity to earn your business.
Shout out to both of those awesome sponsors here on the show. Later on, I'll tell you about a couple more great sponsors too. All right, let's dive into it. Texas A&M, a trip for the Gamecocks this week. And as Michael asked right off the bat, how much can change? How much can Fury make in just 2 weeks? I think that is probably the big question on everybody's mind, at least in terms of this season. What changes will be made to the offense, and how much just impact can you expect someone to make in a very short period of time? Chris, Beamer talked about this a little bit today. And, he essentially said, look, we are making some changes to the playbook. Like, it's not going to be the exact same. And, he kind of said, we're going to tweak a little bit. We're going to subtract a little bit, maybe even add a little bit here and there too. Probably at the end of the day, you'll go into the game with a similar number of plays that are actually on that call sheet that can be called. But, I think kind of what we expected. We talked about this some last week. There's only so much you can do in terms of like actually changing the playbook itself. You don't want to go in and install 50 new plays or something like that. You can maybe go in and install, I don't know if you want to do more than like 10 or so like new plays themselves. What you can do is take that more global, like greater playbook in general and say, hey, we're going to focus on a little bit different segment of plays. We're going to approach this game in our game week by repping a little different sequence of plays and then go from there. And then, of course, you can call it differently on game day. The order you call the plays, the situations you call the plays, how aggressive are you? What's your approach on like second and long? What's your approach in goal line? All those different things are things that a new OC can bring in. And you maybe just, Chris, these are still young guys. Like, I know they're paid now. I know we treat them like professionals. They're still college kids. Having a little different energy in the room can potentially give you a little bit of a boost.
Yeah, and I think that's, you're going to have some changes week to week, just in Beamer references, just based on the opponent, right? So, if Mike Shula were still here, if South Carolina even had been having more success than they have had throughout this season, they'd be going into this game saying, all right, what does A&M do? What needs to be our plan of attack? What are our contingencies? You would see some elimination of, hey, maybe this concept, we don't like that matchup here. This concept, this play, we do like it, and then you go into the game, and always you get into the game and you got to make adjustments from there too. That's something that, Texas A&M defensively with Mike Elko does a really good job of it. Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri after their game talked about that last week, but this is now a heightened change because you do have a new voice and a new coordinator. You have a different approach in terms of how you're putting the plan together. Shane Beamer mentioned this today, Wes, and I do think there's truth to it. It's not like Mike Shula locked himself up in the office, never solicited any opinions, feedback, anything like that. We even see, proofs in the pudding on the field. Every now and then you'll see, hey, that's a Sean Elliott, Georgia State type of run concept that they're running on the field. But it is going to be even more collaborative from what we've gathered now. So, certain things that Sean Elliott or Mark Blackwell may like, or Mike Furry may like. Mike Furry's coming at this from a receivers coach standpoint, right? So that doesn't mean he's going to come out and let's throw the ball 57 times a game, right? But does he think a little bit more in terms of play calling and sequencing plays within the flow of the game? Receivers, maybe. Does South Carolina open it up a little bit more? One of the things that I do think we've seen from them at times, Wes, is that this is an offense that's at times been predictable, right? I think you pointed out at one point, and maybe it's kind of the NFL background. If South Carolina throws the ball on first down, there's this temptation to let's run it on second down and try to get something, right? The defense knows that too. So not saying that's a change Mike Furry will make, but will he? Does he become a little bit more in having more time to self-scout during the bye week and just philosophically having a different approach? Does he open things up a little bit more? I think that's something that some people in the program think could happen. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll be better results. But I do think stylistically probably set to see some changes here. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with, not only in terms of new plays that maybe, this is the first time we've seen that concept this year, but just how they're sequencing the plays that they've already got in the playbook. Because as you said, Wes, you can't totally overhaul this thing, even with the benefit of a bye week.
Yeah, and here's the thing, man. You're facing the thing about football. Like, yeah, you face opponents in every sport, but it's so matchup dependent, man. And you are facing, as we start to get into A&M specifically a little bit, this is one of the best defensive lines, one of the best pass rushes, one of the most just disruptive fronts you are going to face this entire season for a offensive line that has struggled with those very things for much of the year anyway. So, I think a big part of that, if you're this staff, if you're Mike Furry, what can you do to try to offset some of that pass rush? But literally A&M in terms of sacks, tackles for loss, statistically are the best or among the best in pretty much any way you can track that. And not just in the SEC, but the entire landscape of college football. So there are certain things South Carolina is going to do on Saturday. Maybe they're good concepts. Maybe they're even good calls. It's just not going to work at times because that's who you're facing. And so I don't know if we can be too quick to judge the play calling on Saturday if it doesn't all look pretty, because it's just what you're going up against. However, are there some things you can do to maybe slow down that pass rush? Are there some things you can do to maybe keep this defense on its heels a little bit? The interesting thing about A&M, Chris, is that if there's one kind of Achilles heel to this defense, some teams have been able to run the football on them. They're elite at creating negative plays, but to this point, they really aren't an elite defense. Their just overall defensive numbers don't quite stack up. Don't get me wrong, they are very good, and there's a lot of very good defenses that find themselves statistically in the middle of the pack in the SEC right now. If you're 7th or 8th or even 9th best defense in the SEC this year, I feel like statistically, you're actually still pretty good looking at the rest of college football. But this is really an A&M group that has the most elite part of them has been their offense and just their ability to go score. And that's not what I think of when I think of A&M, but that is the reality of what this team is now through through over 3/4 of their season in terms of regular season. So I think it'll be fascinating, yes, to see what they can come up with. Can you do anything just to keep them on their heels a little bit? Can you do anything to get that run game going? I keep going back to that LSU game for South Carolina. Like that was like it almost is completely out of character for what we've seen from the Gamecocks. Like they consistently ran the football all night during that game, and they really just have not been able to do that otherwise. And it's kind of hard to like. I know games aren't static, right? Like you have to go out there, you have to perform. Maybe it's an off night for LSU. Maybe LSU starting to see the writing on the wall or something in terms of where their season was going. I don't know. But point being, is there any way you can lean back on that just a little bit and just find that energy we saw in the run game against LSU? You're going to have no shot to just – if you get in 3rd and long against this bunch, dude, done, over. Don't care what plays you're calling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be hard to go out there and, okay, let's scheme up something here on 3rd and 11, 3rd and 8, down. Like it's going to be so hard with Cassius Howell in that group, just rinse and repeat. Another really, really good Texas A&M front. Actually, Wes, not one of the highest rated fronts that they've had. Typically, you look across their front, when Jimbo Fisher was there, even with Mike Elko last year, and here's 2 or 3 5-stars. They don't even have that, right? Cassius Howell transferred from Bowling Green, and I think was a 3-star recruit. One of the scariest players in college football. You don't want to live and die there, and so you're going to have to run the ball. The interesting thing, to expand on your point about A&M's defense, they have given up some yards at times. They have given up some plays. I mean, very first game, Texas San Antonio, give up over 200 rushing yards. Arkansas, I mean, first of all, they gave up 527 yards to Arkansas, which is a pretty good offensive team. That hasn't been their biggest issue this year. It's been their defense. Bobby Petrino calling the plays there. They've had a pretty good offense. Arkansas rushes for 268, right? Missouri kind of had a version against A&M of what South Carolina put forth against LSU last week, which was run the ball effectively, because Missouri had 207 rushing yards, but you look up and you score 17 points and you lose the game. For South Carolina against LSU, run the ball quite well all night, score 10 points, lose the game. And so 2 things that you don't want this game to turn into if you're South Carolina. First of all, you got to find some type of success offensively, whatever it is. You'd love to be balanced, but can you pass the ball successfully? Can you run the ball successfully? I think you're going to have to be balanced so that you don't turn it into, hey, rushed for 175 yards, but just got in the end zone once or twice, left with a loss. Like that's not what you want. And you obviously have to keep this from, you have to be able to run the ball to keep this from getting into that, 3rd and long type of game. You don't want this to turn into Oklahoma, right? I'm getting a little bit of Oklahoma vibes listening to you talk about this A&M front, where they rank statistically, how many havoc plays they cause, how many sacks and tackles for loss, right? That was a huge concern going into the Oklahoma game. And as it turns out, those concerns ended up being validated because Oklahoma caused a lot of havoc plays against the South Carolina offense, and the Gamecocks really struggled in that game. Now you're taking this show on the road. You're also playing an offense and a special teams group in A&M that's really good, especially their offense. They've been dangerous in the return game. Tall order, no doubt.
I'm going to go ahead and warn y'all in typical podcasting fashion.
Chainsaw.
They're doing work outside my house. Haven't been doing it all day. Can you hear me, Chris, or is it just bad?
No, I've got you. It does sound, we have a faint, leaf blower, chainsaw vibe.
They're cutting a hole in the road in front of my house, like literally
that's
just.
Fun. That's always fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're good.
I'm going to try to talk less today and let Chris talk more. Chris, what do you think about the idea of you almost have to call this game backwards, I think. Like, I feel like you have to throw on first down. You have to run on 3rd and long. Like, you just have to And I know that's the thing that people sometimes will do in short bursts, and then you kind of get away from it a little bit. But I think you almost have to commit to that. Like, literally, whatever the book says you should do, you should just do the opposite in this game.
Yeah. No, I mean, we were talking about that on the radio earlier, right? Like, there have been pockets for South Carolina. There have been pockets of a bunch of different things, right? That's the problem. Like, there hasn't been enough consistency. There's been pockets of, oh, I ran the ball pretty well here. Oh, passed the ball pretty well in this game. We protected well in this quarter of football. You know, it's just none of those things have added up consistently. But I think one of the other pockets we've seen is that it seems to me that when South Carolina has spread the field, come out, passed the ball, and had some success doing it and been able to pass to set up the run, they've had a little bit more success with that. And it seems like they have gotten away from it. Now, what are the reasons for that? I'm not going to pretend to know. It could be something they got schematically. It could be on a given play, there was an RPO concept. It could be that they just got away from it for whatever reason, because, you know, maybe they should have been opening it up more. I think it's probably all of those things in reality. But I do think, you know, that's kind of why I brought up the whole Furry wide receiver background type of thing. Like, he recruited a lot of these guys. He coaches a lot of these guys. South Carolina has been one of the only things that they've done well offensively this year is they have made explosive plays. Now, they've been overly reliant on them, which you don't want to be. Explosive plays are great, but you don't want to be boom or bust, and that is what they have been. So thinking of some ways to get the ball out in space quicker. What's another thing we've talked about, Wes? 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. You're looking back at the tape. There's a lot of downfield routes here where either the defense is dropping guys back and Lenore Sellers doesn't see anything because there's 7 or 8 guys in coverage. Now he's having to bail the pocket. Defense is being patient. They're spying him from the backside, and then go get him, you know, if he bails the pocket. Not even Lenore Sellers can break out of that all the time. We've seen instances of that where you're wondering, why are there not more quick routes? Like, why is there not a little bit more to kind of take the pressure off of this offensive line, particularly against really good D lines, and pressure off Lenore Sellers? So from a play calling standpoint, that's one of the things that I'm really keyed on. And that it does include calling the game backwards, you know, coming out, being aggressive. I mean, quite frankly, Wes, you don't have a lot to lose. You're an underdog in this game on the road by multiple scores, right? When you've played like your style, quote unquote, offensively this year, it hasn't worked out. And so that doesn't mean throw every bit of caution to the wind, right? But like your example of just do the opposite of what the book says, I think there's validity to that, right? Come out, play like you have nothing to lose, open the thing up, be unpredictable. You know, do we see some trick plays maybe? I don't know. But you got to try some things different. And at some point you have to execute the basic, right? I mean, if you're Mike Furry in this offense, one of the things you're going in just on principle is you're probably saying, you know what, we're going to have to run the ball a little bit. We're going to have to get the ball in space to receivers on screens and block the perimeter well. We're not going to be able to just call a bunch of downfield routes all the time against this defense the way that they're constructed. That seems like a dangerous game to play, right? So, yet the reason I say that, at some point you've got to execute some of the basic, right? You can't go out and run a trick play every time to generate something offensively. But can this staff, can the new offensive staff scheme up some things that helps the players with being able to execute the basics at times? I think that's important.
Well, I think people kind of, I see it a ton right now, especially when we talk about what do you want in the new OC. You see a ton of, I don't want a guy who runs it up the middle all the time. And it's like, I've never seen anybody complain about a run up the middle when it chunks for 12 yards. Nobody even notices that it was a run up the middle. When, like, I remember, so remember that drive, like, I think it was the first drive of the second half against Alabama last year, where South Carolina had like everything working. I think they maybe threw the ball once or twice, but they ran it like 8 times or something and went right down the field and took the lead against Alabama. And people were like, that's the best call. It's the best call drive all season long. Like, well, that's because they were able to run the ball. Like, it's kind of like you'll see people that are big into like investing. Like, everybody looks like a genius when we're in a big bull run. Every OC looks smart when you're able to run the ball, right? So, you're going to have to try to run at some point. I think now I can agree, like, run the ball when everybody on the planet is expecting you to run the ball is different, unless you're just one of those teams that can have success doing that, than running the ball in some different scenarios. So we'll see what Furry wants to do. They're, I'll be curious to see on the road, Kyle Field, big time environment, man. How in rhythm will it be? Like, can the offense get the plays in on a consistent basis, and kind of just is the operation smooth? That's something, frankly, we have not seen enough of this year, and it's been an issue. The pre-snap stuff with a brand new play caller. How much does all that factor in this game as well?
Yeah, I mean, Shane Beamer mentioned today, Wes, that he had like a PTSD from South Carolina's 2021 trip down to College Station, his first year there. And, it was a rough, 44-14. South Carolina doesn't score until the fourth quarter. You have a couple picks. Your leading receiver has 2 catches. Your leading rusher has 59 yards. You don't play well defensively. You don't really play well in any phase of the game, And so, look, this is a very difficult place to play at Kyle Field. And you're not playing a team. It'd be one thing to go in and say, man, this is going to be tough because Texas A&M creates a lot of havoc plays defensively. And that's an area that South Carolina's really struggled this year. Well, that is true. But guess what? The other, you pointed out earlier, I agree with you. Credit to the A&M defense for doing that. But the offense for the Aggies has been the most impressive thing this year, and they're really good on special teams too. I mentioned earlier, the return game, they've got multiple scores, but they've got a stable of backs. They play 3 or 4 running backs. They can run the ball effectively. Marcel Reed has played really, really well. Like, he's been very efficient. He can run the football. He can push it downfield. He makes really good decisions. They do a good job schematically on offense, and they've got weapons. I mean, they got a couple tight ends that can catch the ball. They've got a great complement of receivers. I mean, yeah, everybody talks about Casey's Concepcion, rightfully so. Wes, we were looking at a play earlier on a great one-handed catch by an A&M receiver, and we're like, all right, which one is that? They've got a full complement of guys offensively that can really hurt you, and a veteran offensive line too. So point is, this is a multifaceted challenge to go on the road. And so if you're going to have a chance to pull the upset, chief among that is let's not beat South Carolina. So the procedural stuff, the turnovers, the negative plays, like if you're the coaching staff, if you're Mike Furry, Sean Elliott, Marquell Blackwell, all the other guys, Shane Beamer, the first order of business in these meetings and preparing on the field is, how can we not beat ourselves? How can we not go backwards against a team that's been really good at making people go backwards all year?
The catch made by the guy we were looking at earlier, not even one of their top 2 receivers. Mario Craver is, we're probably, if you follow Gamecock football recruiting, pretty familiar with Casey Concepcion. That was a potential target for South Carolina out of the portal this last cycle. He is there and has formed just a very good duo with Mario Craver. But like Chris said, there's some depth to this spot. They actually, Chris, will put multiple. Hold on. I think I got the right. I don't know what I'm looking at right now, guys. My stats just completely glitched out on ESPN and started showing the wrong names and stuff. Anyway, point being, they have depth. They will use that depth. Chris, they will spread you out with receivers. They will go 2 tight ends at times. They will go 2 tight ends, but then throw the ball off of that. And it really is a pretty, I would say, well-designed offense. Marcel Reed has gotten better since last year. South Carolina, I thought, played pretty well against him last season and kind of kept him contained. He will beat you through the air, but he still has the ability to run the football when he needs it. I think that's one of the most impressive things about this A&M team is that they only introduce the QB run when they have to have it or when he takes off running, right? It's not necessarily a thing where they feel like they have to run the quarterback 20 times to have success.
Yeah, they could do so many different things. Craver has been a revelation. I haven't even mentioned his name until you just brought him up, Wes. The transfer. I mean, a couple transfer guys, few transfer guys littered throughout their skill position guys on offense. All of them really good, right? And they can all, operate in space. You got to think about the downfield threat with them, both with them getting downfield, Marcel Reed being willing to push the ball downfield. But you also just have to worry about he's a guy that's going to take what you give him. And those guys are so good in space that they can, so slippery. They can make you miss and then go make a really big play. And then I mentioned earlier, they've got several running backs that they will rotate in and out of the game, all who are very capable, a lot of former really highly recruited guys. So this is one that's going to be another challenge for the Gamecock defense. And I think we got to give some credit, Wes, right? Like a lot of this is kind of turning into an A&M love fest, but it's hard not to do that when you play the competition that South Carolina plays. Past couple weeks, we've loved up Ole Miss and how good they are, particularly on offense. Same thing with Bama, but these are really, really good football teams, and there's really big challenges. I think you got to credit Clayton White and that coaching staff and that defensive side of the ball, because have they given up some plays, including in key moments against Ole Miss and Bama? Sure. But when you look at how that side of the ball performed against two teams that were favored, when you're not getting a lot of support from your offense, I think the performances have been admirable, right? So can the Gamecock defense go on the road and give you a chance to have any offensive improvement that you can make matter? You know what I mean? Like, the first question is, can your offense improve against a defense that's been quite havoc producing? That's the first step. But can you get the type of performance that you've been getting for your defense that can end up making that matter if you're able to move the ball, put some points on the board, right? What Carolina's been putting on the board, what they put on the board against Ole Miss wasn't good enough to win that game. There wasn't really a scenario where South Carolina's defense time and time again could get enough stops against that Ole Miss offense where, scoring 14, 17 points is going to cut it. So when you're looking at the last three games, including this one, hey, you got to go score some points. It can't be, they ran the ball pretty well this game, or, hey, they hit some plays, or Nick Harbor had another long touchdown. It has to be not just moving the ball. It has to be actually converting into some points, because you're going to have some to win any of these three games. You're playing three teams in a row that have all shown that they can score.
I got to share this with y'all just so I'm not the only one. Like, I'm not going crazy, right? Like, this says A&M player stats. We have Matthew Stafford playing for A&M now. Am I seeing this right?
Oh. Yeah.
Kyron Williams is playing running back for A&M. The receivers are right.
That's bizarre, man. What is going on here?
Have you ever seen that?
No.
Jimmy Garoppolo is also has run the ball 3 times for -3 yards for Texas A&M. According to the people that are on the podcast version are like, what are you talking about? That's why my brain glitched out when I was going over some stats, because I literally was just pulling up the ESPN stat profile for A&M, and it starts throwing Rams players in there. So anyway.
Did you see Clint Hammond was on ESPN too on that ad?
I did see that.
Hey, just saying.
Meant to be. All right. Hey, that's a great segue, by the way. We already told everybody about Clint, but Chris, let's talk about a couple of our other great sponsors here on the show. Why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, I'll tell everybody about our friends over at Palmetto Golf and Belts. That's palmettogolfing.com. As you can imagine by the name, Palmetto Golf and Belts at palmettogolfing.com has all sorts of awesome custom golf products, gloves, towels, tees, and belts in a variety of designs, custom made stuff. The needlepoint belts are a big hit among members of the Insiders Forum and just a bunch of people I know. I have one. They're super well made. They're a lot more affordable than a lot of the other needlepoint belt options you'll find online or in retail stores. And then, of course, also gloves, towels, and tees. Got the cross design, the palmetto tree and moon. He's got the South Carolina blue for the state of South Carolina. He's got the garnet for you Gamecock fans out there, little Gamecock flavor. Palmetto Golf and Belts at palmettogolfing.com. It's November 11th, so a great time for a gift for that golfer in your life. Brandon Cohn, who owns and operates Palmetto Golf and Belts, big Gamecock fan, longtime Gamecock Central member, longtime friend of the show. So if you're looking for some new golf swag, make sure you check out Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com, whether it's for yourself or for a friend or a family member for Christmas. He's always got some great specials going on. Go check him out now, palmettogolfing.com.
And once again, Chris, this show brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Go ahead and download the Game Time app today. Super quick, super easy way to buy tickets to sporting events, to concerts, to comedy shows. The Game Time app is giving the advantage back to you, the fan. Again, gametime.co, or just do what we do, download the Game Time app. Incredibly easy to use. The Game Time guarantee means that you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you are going to pay. Of course, still a few games left for South Carolina. Maybe you want to go to an NFL game at some point this year. Basketball getting going as well. Some great deals right now already on the Game Time app. They also have this thing called Customize Your Spot. And, wrong name. Zone Deals is where you choose the section. Game Time will select the seats, and you save. So that essentially just means you're telling them, I'm okay with the seat as long as I'm in this general area. They're going to pick that seat, and then you're going to get a much better deal at the end. Game Time also has Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets today with Game Time. Just download the app, create an account, use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account on there. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. I've used it. Chris, have you used it? Chris has used it. He's shaking his head yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to get to but yes, I have used Game Time multiple times. Amazing.
I went to the World Series with Game Time. So
you went to the World Series? I went to an NBA playoff game with the Game Time app.
Game Time app, gametime.co. Jeff said, meet you from the parking lot. Hey. Big Meech, Chris. Hey, we got the Meechy go-off game already. Can't hear you.
Yeah, sign of things to come, I think. Earlier than expected.
He used the Game Time app this week. Shout out, Alex.
Yeah, perfect.
Also, hey, Chris, real quick. They're not on the list for today, but shout out to our guy Hijinks earlier. We sold him on some Brunt.
Hey, come back and give us your review, man. I really think you're going to love them.
Bruntworkwear.com. Use the code GC. You'll get $10 off. Hijinks, Did you use your code? Hopefully you did. So you got $10 off. But yeah, shout out to everybody who supports our sponsors. But Jeff, Meechy the Meechy go-off game, my heart was happy to see that. I can't even lie, dude. Just launching from Blossom Street.
No regard for human life, just launching. It was awesome. Didn't anticipate Game 2 Southern Miss at home being the Meechy go-off game. Nonetheless, here we are. There's probably going to be others.
Oh, there will be others.
There will be others.
You got to respect man, somebody's got to make a move here. So might as well be me. I'm about to start launching.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna be honest. I have not heard the entire press conference yet because I had audio issues. Was reading through. I'm gonna go back and listen after the show. Based on what you heard and what you read, Chris, any takeaways from what Shane Beamer had to say today?
Well, I'll go with an offensive coordinator note, Wes, just because obviously a lot of people are talking about offensive coordinator. We've done it in the context of the A&M game, but I thought this was interesting. So Shane Beamer did push back, and I think he literally used the words, like the phrasing, like I'll push back on the idea that he hasn't had basically a successful offensive coordinator. And I'm going to write about this a little bit this afternoon and kind of flesh out and expand my thoughts. On one hand, I understand the fan point of view. On the other hand, I understand what he's saying. In that, there have been some spots of offensive success at South Carolina, right? You think about 63 points against Tennessee. You think about 31 points the following week against Clemson to upset them on the road. Think about a few of the other games, right, where they put forth some solid performances and were able to exceed expectations in year 1 and 2. You think about the Dow Loggins era. Obviously, 2023, very tough season. Not good enough. Back half of 2024, pretty darn good. Your quarterback is getting, hey, this guy may be a Heisman guy next year. You're scoring points, including against Texas A&M. South Carolina scored 24 unanswered points and put 44 points on the scoreboard in that game. They beat Missouri. They scored some points down the stretch. Clemson game, not so much. Lenore Sellers' go-off game. But they won 6 straight games, and the offense was a big part of that. And, of course, their offensive coordinator, Dow Loggins, did parlay that into a head coaching job, which is normally a good sign. Normally, you don't do terrible as an OC in a year and land a really, really good G6 job in App State. Normally, you can say that wasn't a good hire for them, but, you have to do some good things. And Mike Shula, which is the one that I'm going to be honest, Wes, like out of all those guys, I thought that made the most sense out of all the hires and was the one that Shane Beamer had to fire after not even a season, so you just kind of never know. Beamer was kind of also pointing out like, all the guys have some NFL experience, but Marcus Satterfield was a college guy, which is actually true. We talked about that on the show the other day. He only had 1 year of NFL experience, also had the most extensive playbook, which is kind of crazy. So the general point he was getting at is like, look, we have done some good things. I'm not going to sit here and say the hires have been perfect because they have not. Not going to sit here and say they've been awful because we've done some good things. But like Shane Beamer's already addressed. I saw somebody on Twitter, of course, he's saying he's perfect and has never done anything. It's like, no, there can be some nuance here. Shane Beamer's not going to get up. Yeah, not on Twitter. He's not going to get up and say, all of my coordinator hires have been abject failures. We've never done anything good during my tenure. Like, obviously, he's not going to say that. But he's also pointed out, we have not been good enough, not only this year, but multiple years in several areas, tackles for loss, sacks, turnovers, etc. He had to make a change this year, but I think he's looking also at the bigger picture. So, Wes, I kind of get the vibe, and of course, he didn't talk about this today. I still get the vibe that the next hire is going to be more of a guy with a more extensive and recent college background, I do think, if I had to take a stab. But I thought those comments nonetheless were kind of interesting. He also said that he's, took the bye week and was able to kind of get ahead and do some work on those 2 open coaching positions that he has.
Yeah, I think he knows that he knows how important this hire is for himself. And I do think, Twitter's not the place for nuance, man. Everything has to be dramatic and extreme. And that's just the way things are. The offense has not been good enough. I always reference, though, the offense last year in SEC games was the second most productive offense in the entire conference. So clearly you were doing something right. And it was good enough for South Carolina to be a few plays away from the playoff. So again, that doesn't mean it can't be better. It doesn't mean you've arrived. And certainly this year's offense was not good enough, or there wouldn't have been a coaching change. Like I don't think Beamer's pushing back on that part at all. I think he's just pushing back on the idea that those hires were just complete abject, nothing positive to talk about. Failures is what he's pushing back on. And here's what I'll push back on a little bit too. Like, can Beamer tweak what the approach is on offense? Yes, he absolutely can. I think he should, in terms of who or what you're targeting, what their background is, what their philosophy is, what their system is, all those things. You can take a little bit of a different approach, I believe, and I believe you should. But I see this, Beamer can't hire an OC. I mean, it's not like he hasn't hired good coaches during his time here. Like, I mean, Clayton White has been his DC the entire time. Sterling Lucas has been a great hire for South Carolina. Torian Gray has been a great hire for South Carolina. You go out and nobody would have thought you'd go hire a group of 5 head coach in Sean Elliott. Now, it made sense. There were circumstances there, but to go out and get him, you've hired some folks. Mike Furry was someone a lot of people weren't even familiar with, and most people have been very happy, I feel like, with what he's done in terms of going out, recruiting receivers, and bringing in talent at his position. So, like, I don't think it's fair because, and I'll push back too. Like, I don't think the OC hires have been grand slams by any means. Like, let's just be honest. Does this need to be a really, really good hire? Yes, absolutely. But just because, like, it hasn't hit yet doesn't automatically mean, it's impossible for him to hire an OC. Like, that to me is silly. Like, coaches are not static either. You're always getting better or getting worse. And, if he goes out and makes how long did Dabo beat his head up against the wall before their thing really took off? And I know it's not the same, but also Clemson was playing much different competition when they were kind of racking up okay seasons, but not taking the next step. Like, I'm not saying it's apples to apples, so don't even come at me with Clemson was already doing this. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's hiring coaches is not a scientific thing. It just is not. And you can hire the smartest person in the world, but if they come in and they're a terrible person and they don't fit in and they're combative and everybody, doesn't get along with them, then that's going to be an issue as well. So, like, let's not pretend like it's just some easy thing. It's easy to do. How many of the coaches out there, myself included, I thought South Carolina should look hard at Garrett Riley when they made the Dow Loggins hire. Well, his feet are on fire in Clemson right now.
Yep.
And if you'd have hired a Riley, I don't believe you would have had Spencer Rattler for another year at South Carolina either, frankly. So it's not some science, and it doesn't mean just because it hasn't been gotten quite right to this point doesn't mean you can't get it right this time.
Yeah, and there's also levels to, going back to the nuance. It's okay to separate, there have been 3 there's technically been 4, but in terms of guys that have literally called a play at South Carolina under Shane Beamer, there have been 3 offensive coordinators. And I don't think it's intelligent to loop them all into one category. Like, if you do that, you could say, hey, there hasn't been a guy that has consistently produced whatever your mark is, 35 points a game, or, whatever your definition of success is. There's different definitions. That is absolutely true. But to say they're all the same category and all like nobody's done good things, like, again, going back to Twitter, I need to stay off there. I had a fan the other day. Shane Beamer doesn't have any meaningful wins at South Carolina. All right. What are we doing here? Like, I guess you didn't celebrate any of the Clemson wins or any of the ranked wins or, the stretch last year, top 15. Like, I guess you didn't, none of that meant anything. It's just, I guess, playoff or bust. And it's great to have playoff aspirations, but you were close there last year, right? And the guy that some people are still saying is absolutely terrible was Dowell Loggins, who got you there. I mean, what if he didn't take the app job or another job and he's back this year? I don't know. Maybe the results are marginally better. Maybe they're the same. Heck, maybe they're even worse. But interesting to think about, right? So his tenure was certainly not the same as Mike Shula's. Those two tenures were not the same as Marcus Satterfield. There's agreements, which Shane Beamer has actually said, that none of them were good enough. But you can't just divorce that completely from like, oh, they've never done anything good on offense, right? There's concerning trends even in the good stuff. So I think becoming more consistent is a big thing, cutting down on the problem areas that have plagued South Carolina for 5 years, basically, and just being more consistent. I mean, that's what they got to find.
I think an O-line friendly scheme, a scheme that, and again, some of this comes down to players and execution, all that stuff. But I do think you can maybe, it's like a sliding scale, like we talk about. There are certain schemes that put pressure on one position, maybe take some pressure off another. And can you just take a little bit of pressure off this offensive line? Because the O-line, frankly, has been, at least in terms of consistency, I'm not saying it's been all bad, but in terms of consistency, it's been a consistent problem for South Carolina for like a decade now. So I think when you look at it like that, can you just do something different? I don't know if Beamer would go this route, man. I would love the idea of him looking kind of hard at somebody like a Kevin Decker at Old Dominion, which is the Heupel offense, but without the, hey, we're going to go tempo all the time. And here's my question. Here's kind of my biggest thing. I hope we can learn soon. We'll obviously learn it to an extent with who he ultimately hires, but how far outside of the box is Beamer willing to go? How far outside the box does he want to go? And how far away from what they've been doing? Like, does he believe, and he did not rule out the idea of hiring a coach today that does have NFL ties. I think he did not want to paint himself into a corner by just telling people what they want to hear. People want to hear right now, it's not going to be pro style. It's not going to be an NFL guy. It's what people want to hear. He didn't box himself up and say that. But just how far different from what their approach has been on offense does Beamer want to go? Like, does he think it's kind of a general approach standpoint, or does he think the issues have been more in the minutia, more in the game day play calling, the game? Like, you can have a global offense, but as we've talked about, how do you exactly call it on a game-to-game basis, on a play-to-play basis? Does he think it's more the overall idea is fine, but there are other things within it that need to be fixed? Or does he think, no, we're going full-on spread, like completely opposite direction? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And then how does that play in with what he wants his football team's identity is? Does he have updated thoughts on what his football team's identity should be, in all three phases? And I'm just talking about how you're playing complementary football, on one hand, you want to be able to service your defense and be able to stay on the field and score points. That's something you absolutely have to do, right? And vice versa. So, I'm sure he's thinking through all those things. How much of it is obviously made a change at O-line coach too. So probably thinking about that, like, okay, if we were the same schematically and we're doing a better job coaching the actual offensive line, like, how much different would that be? But clearly he thinks all of it's a problem because he's made changes in all those areas. So it will definitely be fascinating. And the other thing, Wes, is, you can go out and identify the scheme and the guy, and then you got to go get the guy, you can't, a lot of guys who are doing very well with their scheme, with their team, a lot of them are in good situations. Some of them are going to be interviewing for head coaching jobs as soon as this offseason. Some of them are already with really good teams and are highly paid and stable. I think there is an attraction to this job for, it's an important season next year, no doubt. But I think there's also an attraction to this job because if you, say you're a lower level guy, come to the SEC, do well as an offensive coordinator, you can pretty quickly parlay that into a head coaching job. Dow Loggins just did it, last offseason.
With an offense that was terrible, according to some people. I to go back to your point earlier, I can't help but think this year might have looked a little bit different if Loggins was still, like, if you just had that continuity with the same play caller, the same just feel, not that this team would be, I'm not saying the record is like flipped or anything, but I don't know, that change just ended up being, I would say, much bigger deal than maybe a lot of us thought. There's a lot of people that were completely okay with Loggins taking that App State job, and I think I don't know. We'll never know, I guess, but interesting to think about. All right, we're gonna get out of here. We'll be back. We'll have much more detailed thoughts on A&M and the matchup, and try to get an A&M guest coming up as we always do on Thursday afternoon, and then Kendall and Jack will be on, I assume, tomorrow on Wednesday, as always. So shout out to all of you who hopped on. Go check out the full video of Shane Beamer. We'll have that up here shortly. If you had audio issues like I did earlier, we hope to have the full thing up on our Gamecock Central YouTube page as well. In the meantime, come check us out on GamecockCentral.com and check out our complete coverage of not just this, but we'll have South Carolina men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, recruiting. March to signing day is here, and we'll have all that and more for you on GamecockCentral.com. He is Chris. I am Wes. Thank you guys for hopping on with us as always. Y'all have a great one, and we will see you on Thursday.